And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for showing up on this Saturday morning. Anyone here for the first time? You want to share why you're here, now that your hands are already up in here?
Sure. Hi.
Hi.
Just curiosity.
About?
Buddhism in general.
Yeah.
And he's just here to support.
Right on. Were you dragged or somewhat willingly?
No, I wanted to.
Nice, very cool. Glad, well, welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
Anyone else for the first time? Those of you who keep coming back, why show up and let's leave the jokes for later.
I get a lot out of being here because even though the basic message is still the same, every time it's always a little bit different. And when people add things and ask you questions, they often mention things that I'm dealing with, and so it helps me. And then the other thing that I've learned is that the collective meditation, there is something to that. I do meditate by myself, but I find it very beneficial to meditate with others. And that's why I'm here.
Thank you for sharing. Appreciate it. Glad I changed my mind. He asked me if he could share something after I welcomed the new people, and my first response was no. That's the truth, right? I mean, yeah. And then about 60 seconds later, I turned around and said, "What do you want to share?" And he said in brief something about why he was here. And then I said, "Okay, keep it brief." So this practice is just about recognizing who and how you are. For me, that's the beauty of it, you know. It's funny, not that long ago I listened to two people debate, and I wouldn't call it argue, but kind of show off their Zen knowledge, talking about their practice and what they find so important about Zen practice. Meanwhile, in front of them was somebody vacuuming and cleaning the temple, not saying a word. I thought it was fascinating. I just laughed, as I often do, you know. We have to recognize where we're stuck in our own shit. Thinking, you know, that just because we've been at this stuff for 30 years, that means that we know something about Zen practice or Buddhism or meditation. Right? And many reasons I love what you said, especially since I initially said no. So, you know, I'm glad I changed my mind, but I couldn't even tell you how many times over the years, you know, I've been at this 20 plus years, and people say, "Oh, I've heard the Four Noble Truths enough. I'm ready for the next one." You know? And as soon as they say that, that's immediately an indication that they have no idea what the Four Noble Truths actually mean. And depending upon who they are and whether I know them or not, or what mood I'm in, sometimes I'll tell them that they have no idea what it means, and sometimes I'll just kind of, you know, pat them on the back and say, "Well, I'll call you when we have the advanced class." You know? But it is the basics. It is the understanding of why we suffer and how to transform that. That never changes. There's no like, well, what's next? In fact, many cases we just get, Chogyam Trungpa called it spiritual materialism, but in many cases we just get lost in like this, oh, Buddhist stuff, oh, meditation, oh, Dharma, oh, Sangha. Like, how do you bring that into your life? And do you just talk about this stuff? Or do you vacuum? And that's a metaphor not just for vacuuming a temple. It means, do you care for the people and places in your life that you love? Or do you just treat it like crap and then go to your Buddhist thing and make everything okay, like the church on Sunday effect, you know? I mean, I grew up a Jewish kid, so I never went to church on Sunday, but I've heard people refer to it enough that we have that as well. It's called Yom Kippur, where we have one day a year, right? Anyone know what that we get to do on that 1 year? What?
We atone for like our sins and we write them down and throw them out and say we're good, we're clean for everything we've done.
Isn't that amazing? Like we get one day where we're free and clear.
I always made a joke growing up because I had a half Catholic family and I was raised Jewish, so I would be like, well, I don't have to go to church on Sundays, but I only have 1 day.
1 day, right? Yeah, we get to just do terrible things all year, and in 1 day we are completely forgiven. You know, our joke always was we did that about 9 o'clock, and then by 10:30 we were ready for a whole other year had passed to already forgive for what we'd done in that hour and a half. But in all seriousness, this practice, you know, regardless of the religion, because the people here aren't Buddhist, for the most part, 98% of you, the practice is how do we, and again, the vacuum metaphor, how do we take care of what's in our life? And if this practice isn't helping you see that, then at this point you're missing something from your practice. How is this practice impacting the rest of your life? What changes are you making? How are you treating yourself? How are you treating others? How are you showing up physically, mentally, emotionally to other areas and other aspects, other places of your life? That's where this practice comes alive. And the exploration of the Four Noble Truths, which was the first thing he taught, and continued to teach, as they say, 80,000 different ways. For 45 years he taught the Four Noble Truths. But we'll do Buddhist stuff for 6 months and we're like, okay, I'm ready for what's next. You know, welcome to America. So, all right, with that, we'll start with the meditation practice. To those joining virtually, welcome, glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. If you have any, when we get to questions or comments, feel free to chime in and say hello. A couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you, especially for those who are new. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that's racing all day long is not going to shut off. All right? Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. Often helps if you slide to the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands are on the knees or lap, whatever's comfortable. If you need to move, simply move. If you need to cough, simply cough. But if you're sick, please go home and come back next week. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with your eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. We'll start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from the practice, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important with the practice of meditation, to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice, not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And very often that present moment is incredibly difficult, challenging, filled with chaos, conflict. And so this practice is learning to be with life as it arises, not escaping to some perfect place. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But it is a practice. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life, and that's it. And that's why for me the basic practice is hard enough. I wouldn't even be ready for any advanced teaching. Just trying to go one day and doing nothing but thinking good thoughts and speaking good words and doing good deeds, like all day. You know how hard that is? Think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds. All day. That ain't easy. Seeing that others are equally, if not more important than you are. But seeing yourself as no less important than anyone else. Taking care of yourself as well as taking care of others. That's difficult to do. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I always really prefer just to respond to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And again, to those joining virtually, welcome, glad you're here. Feel free as you are to say hello in the chat box. If you have any questions or thoughts, you can put them there and I'll respond as well. Or I'll do my best to respond there. But we'll open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with.
Creating a meditation practice on your own. We talked about how it's very useful to have the community here, and I am finding that. But I have the drive to have my own practice as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that the environment for meditation is very saturated and very confusing, of apps and things and guided, and I'm not really sure if the guided is even where I want to go. Why are you bringing me to a forest and I don't know, it feels like it's implanting some type of experience into me, and I don't necessarily want that. So I don't know, your answer might be very simple, but I do need help and accountability. It's very, very hard for me just to sit.
Yes. No, great question. I always laugh at because, as a practitioner, and I have this discerning mind, and I have likes and dislikes and judgments and critiques, and just like everybody else. And for me, it's always funny when people ask questions that personally resonate with exactly how I see things, and then when people ask questions about the universe and us becoming one, which obviously doesn't resonate with how I see things. And I laugh at your question because years ago I was doing a meditation, spent about 10 years with military active as well as veteran community, folks coming back from combat with PTSD, TBI, traumatic brain injuries. And so I'd go into these environments for people that are just fresh back from combat and living in a very intense life. And I'll never forget one of the guys afterwards. He said to me after meditation, he said, "Thank you for not telling us that I'm going to feel the earth through my feet, because if you'd done that, I probably would have punched you." Right? And so your question around being guided to the forest, the reason I said at the beginning is, yes, my personal practice is not to be guided through the forest, right? Or to feel the earth through your feet and imagining the flowers blossoming from the trees, right? Nothing against all of you who do all that stuff. But all of that, in my opinion, is a form of an escape. Since you're asking the question that way, I'm going to just respond with my 100% personal beliefs. Those practices are incredibly beneficial, incredibly useful, but I still see them as a bit of an escape, because it's like leading you down, it's like watching a movie. We can watch Netflix for 12 hours and get lost in a story. We can also get lost for 2 hours down the forest guidance. And all of a sudden we're like, well, that was a cool trip. But life isn't that. Life is madness. And life and our minds are the same thing. So what I always encourage people, and I'll come back to practical steps in a minute, but I always encourage people to do, for those of you who do have a hard time sitting in silence, right? When you're dealing with PTSD, traumatic brain injuries, tremendous trauma, silence is often what? Torture. So what I encourage people to do, if you do have difficulty sitting in silence, learn. If you can't sit in silence for 1 minute, sit in silence for 30 seconds. If you can't sit in silence for 30 seconds, sit in silence for 10. If you can't do 10 seconds, 5 seconds. I think you get my point. Learn slowly, for those of you who only do guided meditations, to be with yourself. Because the cause of all of your suffering and all of your happiness and all of your joy is your mind. And if we're never learning to sit with it, then we're never learning to sit with it. And we're always escaping. And it's similar to what I was talking about earlier. We actually, with these apps, right? And welcome to meditation madness and ridiculous nature of America in 2024. You'll spend 17 hours trying to find the right app. There's a great book titled, it's a Zen teacher for many years, Brad Warner. The book is titled "Sit Down and Shut Up." No app required. That's not the book title, I'm adding that part. But we have, in a younger generation, gotten lost in like, do I have the right app? Do I have the right clothes? Do I have the right place? Right? Just sit down and breathe. If you want to use apps for motivation and accountability, I'm all for them. I used to really just trash them. Now I've like gotten nice and I'm like, look, use them. If they're going to keep you accountable and you're going to commit to doing it, and you're going to pay $19.99 a month to use that app every day for 30 minutes and chime in and let everybody else know that you used it and log your hours, and that's the only thing that's going to get you meditating, then by all means do it. But you don't have to. You don't need a place. You don't need incense. You don't need an app. You need your mind and a wall. I'm guessing where you live there's a wall. I remember years ago, one of the college kids came in with his skateboard and a pile of books, and he said this is his meditation cushion. He piled the books up on the board, and he sat down, and that was it. What we lack is the discipline to do that. And all of these things, like apps and all this world that's created to think we must do meditation a certain way, I feel is actually deterring us from just sitting down and shutting up. Because then we're feeling like, well, I'm not doing it right. Look, there's 1 million downloads on this mindfulness app, so it must be right. Because millions of people are downloading this app and doing it properly. Well, for a couple thousand years and longer, millions of people have done meditation without apps. Right? So, find a balance. Practically, did you brush your teeth today? You might have heard this example before, but have you heard my toothbrush example?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do it anyways. Did you brush your teeth yesterday?
Yeah.
Tomorrow, every single day. But you're not like, well, I need an app to brush my teeth. Actually, there probably is an app to brush your teeth now. Right? But it'll gauge how long you did it, I'm sure. But right, we just brush our teeth. We don't do it differently every day. We just brush our teeth. 5 minutes every day. Set your phone. Tomorrow morning, if you wake up at 6 a.m., 8 a.m., whatever time you get up, 6 a.m. you wake up, 6:05 to 6:10, set an alarm. In your calendar, put it on repeat. End never. And every single day at 6 a.m. or whatever time you choose, your alarm's going to go off. That's going to remind you to meditate. And just do 5 minutes. Not 20, not 40, not an hour, not some retreat. You don't need to go and spend thousands of dollars. Just sit for 5 minutes with yourself. That's it. Create a habit. And that alarm might go off every day for 6 months. And you're like, nope, not today. Nope, not today. But at least you're thinking about it. And one day you might wake up and say, you know what, I can only be miserable and depressed and stressed out and anxious for so long. And all these other escapes I've been turning to aren't working. Maybe I should just sit down and shut up. So I don't know if that's helpful. And then balance that with community and places to go and people to sit with and all the apps you want.
One more follow-up.
No, please, yeah.
Is music also kind of like a escape because it's like a little bit planting this experience into you?
Yeah. So again, I'm very biased, very much a Zen practitioner, very much eyes open, stare at a wall, and just breathe. So the question for those who didn't hear it, is music also an escape? Nothing wrong with music, but when we're listening to music, we're probably thinking about the music or it's triggering thoughts. So it's not bad or wrong to meditate to music. It's not bad or wrong to use apps. But if your question specifically, is music an escape? Absolutely. Yes, I believe so. And sometimes you might need that escape. So if that's what you need to stay calm and not punch people, then by all means, listen to music. But yes, silence. I mean, you look at the sutras, the Vinaya, which is the code of conduct, and the monks and then the nuns, no music. Yeah. We use so many things in our lives as escapes. Some of them healthy, some of them unhealthy, but they're still escapes, right? People often talk about exercise. That's an incredibly healthy thing. But if you're so stressed out that you have to exercise for 3 hours every single day, then think about why do you need to do that? Keep exercising, but learn to exercise for reasons that aren't driven by absolute stress and anxiety. Not as an escape, but as something that is healthy for you. So always important to understand what we're escaping to and why. What else? Yeah.
When would walking meditation be more appropriate versus sitting meditation?
Yeah. So the question was, when would walking meditation be more appropriate versus sitting meditation? Walking meditation would be more appropriate when it's more appropriate. The Buddha taught very clearly sitting, standing, walking, or lying down, right? Meaning, to me, this is a metaphor for everything we do as a meditation practice. For those who have trouble sitting, walking meditation is beautiful. So I wouldn't necessarily look at it as appropriate or not appropriate. I look at it as another form of meditation practice. The Zen practice, very slow moving meditations to where you're literally like one foot is down, your heel is up, and you take about 30 seconds for your heel to transfer to your toe to hit the ground. And that's a half a step. And then you slowly move the other one and your heel is up, or your toes are up, and then you take about 30 seconds for your toes to transfer down to the ground. That's a slow walking meditation. There's also fast walking meditations. I want to be very careful to remind us all that going on a hike is wonderful, but don't call it a meditation just because you're on a hike. Like, just go on a hike, right? There's nothing wrong with hikes, but meditation is a concentration and focus on the present moment. So whatever we're doing, make it a practice to concentrate and focus on the present moment. And walking meditations are beautiful. Yeah. No wrong time, I guess, is the answer. Yeah. Other questions?
I was recently having a conversation with someone, and I said that I was attending a lay-led Buddhist temple. And they said, oh, is it Zen or is it Tibetan? And I didn't know how to answer.
Yeah. Great. So what did you end up saying?
I said, I should know that.
I should know that. I appreciate the honesty. Yeah. It's one. So very often, well, the answer directly to that question is, specifically with this class, is it Zen or Tibetan? Would be neither.
Yeah.
The temple, and you know this in theory, but just for anyone else, the Dharma Bum Temple itself, when we started 17 years ago, was opened to introduce all the different schools of meditation practice. So those of us who lead have a very specific Buddhist background that we might practice in our own lives. And in most cases, that's the practice that we share. But specifically for me, on my Saturday and Tuesday, even though I have a Zen practice and that's my background mixed in with Pure Land Buddhism, I'm not leading specifically a Zen practice. I'm not leading a Pure Land practice. I'm not leading a Tibetan practice. I am, for me, sharing my understanding of the fundamental, basic. Always dangerous to say the word fundamental when they ask you about going to a religious place, but I am sharing my understanding of the core, basic teachings of Buddhism. Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, which are in all the schools of Buddhism. So, one way you can respond to that is, if you're referring to, say, coming to this class, it's not one specific school of Buddhism. It shares the basic teachings of Buddhism, but the temple offers classes that come from all the different Buddhist traditions. But the guy who leads is more of a Zen practitioner and does his best to leave that out. Because otherwise I would ignore pretty much every question ever asked. So, hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah. What else? Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to know more about how the name Dharma Bums came about.
Yeah. Jack Kerouac's book, The Dharma Bums. It's a pretty short story. It's an easy one to answer. Yeah. When we started end of 2006, we were sitting around the red rug that's in the downstairs meditation hall. We're in the downtown area of the temple for 10 years. And we decided to come together and open up a Buddhist place and said, what should we call this? And, we were young American kids. We liked Buddhism. We liked Bob Dylan. We liked a lot of other stuff that was unhealthy and inappropriate. And at that time, and we said, how about the Dharma Bums? And that was it. And it stayed the Dharma Bum Center for about a year and a half, and then we switched it to Dharma Bum Temple to begin to treat a place. And this was in 2008, so 15, 16 years ago. We changed it to Dharma Bum Temple to treat it more like an actual temple, not a place that the way Kerouac would have treated it. So yeah. So it comes from the book title. Yeah. What else? And I think it's important that, often just to add to that is very, for those of you who are familiar with Jack Kerouac, the Dharma Bum's Beat Generation, they had a very beautiful way of seeing, I think, the world, American culture, work, produce, consume, how we just buy a bunch of stuff we don't need, we throw it away, we buy more. iPhones are a perfect example. And I think at that time, their minds were really brilliant and beautiful and open, and they also lived an incredibly unhealthy life. I mean, he died in his 40s from too much alcohol, and wrote about things that definitely are not behaviors that one should do, I think, anywhere in life, definitely not in a Buddhist place. So for those who kind of wonder, Kerouac, Beat Generation, Dharma Bums, we're not teaching what they taught. It's just the history of where the name comes from. Yeah. And at times over the years, people have hey, should you change it? Things like that. And I'm like, no, we should look at how we had to grow and transform and evolve from as individuals. I mean, that's the purpose of the emaciated Buddha statue, is individuals who, in our own way, at times in our life, whether it's today or 20 years ago, lived very unhealthy physical, mental, emotional, spiritual life near death. But with practice, you begin to transform that. The Buddhist teachings around loving kindness and compassion and joy and equanimity and all these practices we talk about, when you bring those into your life, you suffer less. And I'm pretty sure we're all a fan of suffering less. So. Yeah. What else?
What are the Four Noble Truths?
What are the Four Noble Truths? I don't know. Any other questions? Well, the Heart Sutra says that there is no suffering. There is no cause of suffering. There is no cessation of suffering. And there is no path whatsoever. The Heart Sutra says there is no wisdom or any attainment. The Heart Sutra says, with nothing to attain, Bodhisattva is relying on Prajna Paramita, which is perfection of wisdom. Attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, which is supreme ultimate enlightenment. So if you want to actually attain supreme ultimate enlightenment, you first must understand there is nothing to attain. You're welcome. Other questions? Yeah.
So since I've been more involved in Buddhist practice, I've had these strong urges to get rid of things, and this feeling of detachment and impermanence. But there's some resistance, and I have these journals from 10 years ago that I was reading and trying to pay some homage to that time in my life. And so I'm in this space right now where I'm do I burn this? Do I get rid of it? Where can I, it's just coming up that I want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But it feels very not in alignment with who I've been before, which is holding on to the past and knowing who I was and having these journals and sentimental. So I don't know, I'm just interested that this is just naturally arising from the practice.
So the question around, the more involved in Buddhist practice you are, you're recognizing this kind of desire or thoughts around wanting to get rid of stuff and not attached to it. And so your question specifically is around journals from maybe 10 years ago, things and ideas and views. My first comment is don't get rid of the journals. I'll expand on that a little bit, but I just want to say that first. My suggestion is don't get rid of the journals, because you're also asking the question from a place assuming that how you're living your life now is how you'll be living your life 10 years from now. And my caution is 10 years from now, let's say you go home and burn all your journals. 10 years from now, you're going to potentially think that was really stupid. I really would love to see what I wrote 20 years ago, because who you are now is not who you are. Who you were 10 years ago is not who you are. Who you'll be 10 years from now is not who you are. These are all moments in our life. And we can learn from these moments. So very specifically, I wouldn't get rid of the journals. More generally, I think it's important to understand that, yes, the Buddha was a prince, had all the wealth, all the riches, everything you could imagine. And at 29 years old, he left it all. Left the princely life, shaved his head, put on a robe, and lived with 7 objects, right? Most of us have 7 objects in our pockets, right? And so very often, we might see the Buddha as this guy who got rid of everything. And so as you begin to enter Buddhist practice, there might be that idea that, well, Buddhists must get rid of stuff. The stuff is not the problem. The challenge, I don't like to say the problem, the challenge is how attached are we to the stuff? How did we get this stuff? And what would we be like if we got rid of this stuff? Or if it was taken from us? You mentioned impermanence, right? If you got rid of the journals, you might be okay with that. But let's say someone broke in and stole all of your journals. You might not be okay with that. But either way, the journals are gone. So it has to do with your perception of the journals, right? I know for me on this journey, and I'm also always very careful to try to caution people to not necessarily do things the way I did things, which was, for the most part, got rid of everything and left everything. And looking back, I'm like, well, that was really dumb. You know? I should have saved all that money because I could have bought a lot of temples. Right? Money, houses, cars, things are not bad. It's what we do to get them. It's how we use them. And it's how we are if we don't have them. That's what's important to understand. Right? Now, if you're obsessing over these journals, if all you're doing is just day in and day out obsessing over them, then maybe get a little storage locker, lock them away, and every year go visit them. Right? That's what I do with my baseball card collection and the important stuff I want to keep. I have a nice little storage unit, a little 5x5 space for the things that I'm still attached to that I don't want to get rid of. But I don't need to be obsessing over them and looking at them all the time, so they're locked away. I pay my little monthly fee, and about once a year or so I go and I organize it and I look at it and I leave it alone. You know, that's my way. But like I said, looking back, I don't think it was wise to get rid of or treat the things and stuff that I got rid of the way I got rid of it. And it was for me, it was like this, like, money and stuff that I thought was the problem. The problem wasn't the money and the stuff. The problem was my view, my attachment to it, what I did to get it, or how I used it. That was the problem. There would have been nothing wrong with having all of that. So, yeah.
Do you have a mint condition Tony Gwynn, Don Russ,
1982
rookie card?
I don't have a mint condition 82 Don Russ rookie card. I have an 82 Don Russ rookie card. It's not mint condition, and this is back in the day before grading existed. I'd probably have to spend thousands of dollars just to get all my cards graded, you know? So, no. But I do have a couple of 82 Fleers that he signed in 1985 at San Diego School Baseball. So, yeah. He's a pretty special person. Yeah, do you? No. I thought we could be like besties or something. Yeah. Anything else? To do one more question before we close? Yeah.
Who, like, is Buddha someone that is worshipped in Buddhism, or someone, just can you elaborate more?
Yeah.
I don't know anything. So
Totally.
God?
No, great question. The question was, is Buddha like worshipped? I'm paraphrasing you, but you said, is Buddha like worshipped? You said you don't know anything. Is Buddha like a god? And I just repeat that for those virtually who maybe didn't hear the question. So no, not a god and not worshipped. The perception might be that he's worshipped because you perceive Buddhism and you see bowing and chanting and rituals, and even here there's all this stuff up on the shrine, and I had people join palms and recite these weird words and did this thing, so it might look like I'm praising or worshiping him. But in brief, he was a prince who lived 2,500 years ago, 500 years before Christ. Born in India, he was Hindu, raised Hindu, he believed in gods and goddesses as a Hindu kid growing up. And at 29, as I referenced briefly, he left home. He roamed the base of the Himalayan mountains for 6 years as kind of a roaming, wandering ascetic. And at 35, he sat down under a Bodhi tree in India and said, I'm not leaving until I figure out why we suffer. So it said he sat for 21 days. He understood the cause of suffering, which is the nature of his own mind. It goes into the Four Noble Truths. Forget everything I told Tom earlier. The Four Noble Truths are: life is filled with dukkha, suffering, discomfort, angst. That's the first one. The second is the cause. To understand that we get greedy, we get angry, we get ignorant. And that's the cause of our suffering. So we practice generosity, compassion, and wisdom. The third is the ending of suffering. That's nirvana, liberation. It's a happy day. And the fourth is the path. And this is the Eightfold Path. And this is to understand that we have views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. All of that you guys can Google for free, right? First 2 pages, Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path. And that is the core Buddhist teachings, right? He then taught for 45 years. And at 80, he died. And then Buddhism left India, goes south, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia for 100 years or so. Turn of the century, 500 years later, it goes into China, Japan, Korea, northern parts of Asia. 1,000 years after he died, it goes into Tibet, really flourishes there. And then, I don't know, past 100 years or so, it comes into the West, US, Europe, Canada, etc. And so he was just a dude. He ate, he went to the bathroom, he slept. Probably all three of those better than we do, but that's what he did. And then he died. And so even at the beginning, and I'll close with this thought, so when we join palms and we take refuge, and the first thing I said was we take refuge in what? The Buddha. So it sounds like we might be worshiping or praising him, right? He's dead. He cannot help you. You are on your own. What we're taking refuge in when we say Buddha is actually what's called bodhicitta, which means Buddha nature. And it means that the Buddha was human, suffered, figured out, and taught how to end suffering. So we find safety, comfort, protection in the idea that we too suffer. And for me, it's like, wow, if some other dude figured out how to end his suffering, then, well, that's inspiring. Because you don't have to be a god to end suffering. You don't have to be a god to be enlightened. You don't have to be a god to like float in the heavens. You could just be happy and peaceful throughout your day. So for me as a practitioner, I look at it as how can I suffer less today than I did yesterday? And always, I think, around the worship question, and different cultures obviously are different, especially heavy into a history of Asian culture with Buddhism. Definitely respected, definitely revered, definitely admired. And there are cultures that will seemingly, and in their hearts and minds, kind of worship and pray to the Buddha. But I don't think it's healthy necessarily for the average person learning about Buddhism to think that it's about worship, because it's absolutely not. But the respect and admiration is there.
Thank you. That was a great explanation.
Thank you. I try. All right, so I'll close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. All right, just a few quick announcements before you all head out. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm the Dharma Bum. We opened up this temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who leave, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students, we're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Every night we have different Buddhist practices led by different folks from a different Buddhist tradition. Every Thursday, 4:30, we do a food redistribution program. I still think it's one of the best things around here. So anytime you think your life sucks and you lack gratitude and appreciation for all you have, show up at 4:30. We make gourmet vegetarian meals, also known as peanut butter and jelly, and we feed people who sleep on the street. So it's a good practice to kind of get out of yourself and just give back to others. First Saturday of the month, so it's wrapping up downstairs right now. We do a half day of silence retreat. Kind of coming back to the other question about meditation, if 20 minutes of silence is torture, then I strongly recommend you try it for 4 hours. When you've done it for 4 hours, it actually makes 20 minutes a little bit easier. But so the first Saturday of the month, we do a 4-hour silent retreat. And it's a great practice. Always something going on. Buddha for You is downstairs if you need it. There's lists inside the bathroom of things to help. We have no cleaning crew. We are it. So if anyone wants to stick around, they did a ton of cleaning inside today. But if anybody wants to do some little things or pick up outside, you're always welcome to. So appreciate you being here. Good luck.